Okay, welcome to our second episode of the Passive House podcast. Very exciting to be here. It's great to get things off and running. Thank you, Zach, for your help.
Absolutely. Thank you, Matthew. I'm looking forward to this.
So, my name is Matthew Cutler-Welsh. I'm based down in Auckland in New Zealand, where we're actually under lockdown again at the moment. So I've got a bit of empathy for the rest of the world who are also in lockdown. But we are intending to get these episodes out on a weekly basis, hopefully dropping every Monday. So thanks to the team at Passive House Accelerator. And we've got some great content coming up. So we're going to jump straight into today's episode, where it's actually an interview that I did a month or so back with James Goodlet, who is an architect based in or just outside of Melbourne, Victoria. And his company is called Altereco. So he's a passive house designer, but he hasn't always been that way. And this is the story about how he found out about passive house and how he's incorporated that into his practice. So enjoy. This is my conversation with James Goodlet from Altereco. You've started down the passive house route.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the last sort of 12 months.
Yep, it's exactly 12 months when I did the course.
Yeah. So what's the split at the moment? Are you sort of trying to shift everything in that direction, or is it going to be just a kind of an extra service amongst everything else?
Yeah, I definitely think it's raised an awareness from my point of view about educating the greater population and getting that mentality shift from minimum standard up to a standard that we are, it has to be self-mandated standard at the moment, but up to a standard that we know that we get excellent results. And in that excellent results is obviously the health and the comfort of those occupants. But it's also about the quality of construction and the longevity of that building and, its resilience and suitability to its location. It's multifaceted, no doubt, but there's a big gap at the moment. So that's sort of what I'm sort of trying to start that voyage on at the moment. I don't think I can draw a line in the sand and say, hey, every project's got to be passive house from now on. Yeah. But what I do want to do is draw a line in the sand and say, hey, we need you to consider all of these elements and we need to, set our own minimum standards. Talk about that with each client at the start so they can have, understand the value of different things, and then, okay, these are our rules that we've sort of created for your project, and that sort of sets performance sort of criteria then for them and what their expectation is from an outcome. Yeah.
Let's start at the beginning of your journey. You're from a family of builders.
Yeah, that's right.
A few generations?
There is. Yeah, there is a few generations. So, my dad's in the trade, and his dad was a builder and his dad was a builder. So,
in Australia?
So, my dad's down in Apollo Bay on the Great Ocean Road, and my brother's down there as well. He's a plumber, and so my grandfather was also a builder, and he was down that way. He was in Melbourne beforehand. But all Victorian based. Yeah.
So what was it that made you want to pick up a pencil instead of a hammer?
There was definitely a skill set there that the tools in my hand were a bit dangerous. Yeah. And I could see, physically what that sort of meant to them. But I guess early on I was definitely involved in that. Was like, little side jobs, I guess, when I was labouring and so forth as a teenager, trying to get some pocket money together. And learn a lot on that sort of journey. I guess I had a bit of an ambition early on to do some kind of design and construct and take a bit of control over my destiny from that point of view. But as soon as I went into uni and education I started off doing building design. and came out of that and got some experience with an architect in Elstonwick, and he really specialised in warehouse conversions and things like that. So he was just a real crafty kind of architect that could make a lot out of small spaces, and really understood and learnt heaps from him. So he had a really small practice, and I just went, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. So that just, the journey you go on, it changes all the time. But yeah, I just really resonated with how he operated. So yeah, put my hand up.
Sustainability. I want to talk about sustainability a bit, because that's obviously a big ethos of Altereco.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Yeah. Look, it started, I guess I went overseas after I studied architecture, and that was probably the realization that, we can actually build differently. Like, if you know what I mean. When I started to see how they were building in Canada, I did some work with an architect there for 6 months, and just raised an awareness of things can be built better or differently. I know the climate's different there, but it was just a real eye-opener for me for our compared to our industry over here. So that was an understanding of that the buildings can be built a bit differently. But I think just like everybody else, we've all been on this path to create a better future for ourselves. We need to secure our future, right? We need to secure this planet and make sure it's going to last. So I think it's the obligation of anybody in this industry to make sure that they can do the best to meet those kind of environmental sustainability requirements.
Before you got into Passive House and more recently, how did that ethos, how did you bring that into your practice?
Yeah, it's been a long journey for that point of view. Like, I came up with the name Altereco back in 2007 and had these high hopes that I was going to be a sustainable designer, and that it was just that's how it was going to be. But
did you have a definition of what that meant when you say sustainable designer? What is that, or what was it?
Yeah, look, I think to me it's about it all comes back to your clients at the end of the day, and how you capture those clients, and how you can then respond and create that environment that they're going to live in, and how long you can make that, how sustainable you can make that environment. So when we talk about the running costs of a building and the impacts of all of the materials that we select, to me it's a very holistic approach. It's not just about the carbon emissions in the energy that we require to run our buildings. It's a lot bigger than that, and I think it comes down to material selection and so forth. And I just really struggled early days to try and capture clients and tell them and give them good reason to be able to do this. But I guess it was about 2 or 3 years ago that I just came to a point where I was working for anyone and everyone and really took a lot of pride in the work that we were doing. But what I realized is that there wasn't the necessary connection with all of our clients. And so I just started to look under the hood a little bit more about what our values were and what we really wanted to create. So I sat down with the team, and we actually wrote out our own manual, our own guidelines on why we're doing things. What's our why? So we started to really nut out our own values, and we created a list of values and what really matters to us when we're at work. And then we set out some goals. So this was us sort of setting our own little rule book, I guess, on how we were going to execute this. So that has been the biggest shift within Altereco in the last few years, of actually empowering all of us as a team to get on the same page. So we're not just spinning that hamster wheel and doing everything we can for whoever it is. We took it on board, and I think that has really changed the journey we're on. And that's what made me just go, okay, I need to go and get this passive house knowledge base and go on that journey. So, yeah, that's, I guess, really been interesting. And, and the team is all on board. We're all on the same journey together. So, yeah.
So did you know about Passive House before going through that process?
Yeah, I knew about it, and I knew about the principles of it just from my own reading of it, and I found it quite fascinating. But there was a few game-changing moments that were in that course, and I came out of it back to the team with so much energy, because it just made me realize that we really do need to create our own set of rules, our own set of standards, our own set of details about how we're going to create our best performing houses. So, it changed the way we design a house from the start. It changed the way we start modeling a house. We use ArchiCAD, so it's sort of changed our composites and our build-ups so that we're incorporating these things, and we're giving our designs from now on that ability to be a passive house if we chose to.
Right. Yeah. So you're creating that possibility from the start of each project.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That could make all the difference. And so, yeah, as soon as we've got that design resolved, we're putting it into design PH and, I guess design managing that as well and cross-checking that to make sure that we're getting the best performance. And just talking the numbers with them as well and just bringing them on that journey. It's a very inclusive kind of design process.
Right. And so those clients, do they know what they're getting into when they first engage with you? They're not all coming to you at the moment because you're a passive house designer. Are they more looking at your portfolio and say, "Oh, I quite like some of these projects"?
Definitely, from a portfolio point of view, there needs to be a connection there in the output of the building at the end of the day. That aesthetic, they need to have a bond with the kind of projects that we're creating. But first and foremost, we do need to interview and choose our clients wisely, just like they need to choose us. I've gone down the path too many times before where we've said, yeah, let's get into this, and then kind of realized that we're probably not the best fit for each other. And so I've actually built a questionnaire recently. We call it the Ultimate Brief, and it's just a Google form at the moment, but it's a series of 82 questions that are filtered into 7 topics. And
it sounds very comprehensive.
It has to be.
It
really is. But it's also for them. Like I want to ask them questions that really dig below the surface. So, for example, I've called it the 7 Ps because all of the chapters start with a P. But yeah, so we really want to know what is their main purpose. Why are we doing this? What's motivating for that? But then we need to know all about the people and who's going to be in there, and we need to know about the place and all about that site and what they know about it and why they purchased that property. Yeah, and it goes on from there. But performance is another thing. So what do they know about performance of buildings and what are they striving for? So we're probably really asking them more questions about comfort and things like that. And that then drives what performance criteria we actually need to create. But yeah, I guess just looping back around to that, I think we really need to capture the right kind of clients, and they may not know that they're passive house clients yet. But I think as that evolves, if they align with our values and they become our client, then through that collaborative process, we can nurture them towards a really high performing house, at least at a minimum.
I like that idea of clients not knowing that they're passive house clients yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the wrong way to sell it to them is to try and put our hand up in the air and wave a flag and say, hey, we'll design your passive house. I don't think they really know tangibly what that looks like and what is that journey like. And, we all hear those fears about, it's going to cost me more to be more environmentally sustainable. And I think we need to start to talk to them about either compromises or just that it's actually, there's some decisions you can make along the way that are actually going to build this as an asset. It's a stronger asset. It's a better asset. They're going to be highly valued in the future. You look 10 years down the track, it's one of the things that you like to talk about is, where are we 10 years from now? Well, where they're going to be in is a bloody good spot in a house.
Building something beyond even the client's lifespan, potentially.
Yeah, we have to think that way. Nothing irritates me more than a house that you see that was built 20 years ago that's getting renovated. Like there's talk about, finite resources. Like we can, it's one of the most important things is to invest in that absolute, the materiality of the house and that fit for purpose kind of decisions that we make along the way in our specification. That needs to see the distance. Like,
how does that mentality change the size and the number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, that sort of thing? Because I often hear people designing for resale, but does that mean that they're not always designing for their immediate needs?
Yeah, it comes out in our brief that we really then, if we've got this comprehensive brief and they're talking clearly about what their needs are, we can always loop back on that. Like I think good design will give a building flexibility in the future to be adapted in a way that suits most people. Someone can come into a space and see it as a bedroom and I could use it as this or whatever it might be. Like I think ultimately good design is going to be flexible. It's best suited for that site. But at the end of the day, I think, I'm not after clients that are flippers. We want clients that are going to be in these houses that want, they're invested in their community as well. There's probably a reason that they like the community they're in. The house might still be a stepping stone as their family grows or, as their family shrinks or whatever might happen. But yeah, we really need people to be thinking longer term about this. They're crunching the same numbers they are when they think about, is it worthwhile me putting solar panels on the roof because what's the payback on that? And I might sell it in the meantime. And so I guess some people are always going to prioritize the cost of something rather than the value add to it. And that's always going to be a challenge, but I think sort of looping back to the longevity and that construction standard that we're sort of talking about and building for longevity. I think we also forget that this is heavily reliant on the builders and who we engage for the project. So I feel that obviously coming from a family of builders, I have full faith that there are builders out there that have pride in their work, that they are still true craftsmen and they want to get the best result for their client. And look, to be honest, like I think the best success we have with projects are the ones where we get builders involved as early as possible. So we really encourage the negotiated tender sort of scenario or early contractor involvement. I'm not sure what you call it in New Zealand, but
it's that idea of getting the team together right at the start and figuring things out rather than.
I think there's too many negatives. Or it's too much risk with that. Like the whole project can crumble onto its knees because we're designing a custom home on a particular site and we're guessing what the price might be in the future. I think there's too many variables there. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a myth. It's a little bit of I'm going to get best value for money if I can go to a competitive tender with multiple builders. And I've found like we take pride in our documentation and we make sure it's thorough. So when that does go out to that multiple builders, when it comes back, the numbers are so consistent. If there's one variable that raises a question, what have they forgotten or what have they loaded?
Yeah.
Depending on which way it is. But they end up not choosing on the number. They end up choosing the builder based on rapport and who do they feel can carry out what they want to get done. So why not bring that interview process early, right at the start, and we go from there. If we're confident that their budget aligned with their brief, look, that's one of the biggest issues right at the start, isn't it? That as designers, we've got to navigate a client's brief and a client's budget from the start. And they're not always aligned, so we really need to have that discussion at the start. I think that's critical. And if we can't be confident that we can go and put pen to paper because there's too many variables about what the actual construction cost might be, then I think it's really important to get a builder in to say, hey, this is the direction that we're going to go. This is what we want to achieve. What would be a suitable budget for this particular site and all the constraints that are here? And this is the kind of outcome we want to get. Set the budget, right? And that can be relatively loose, but we're all on the same playing field there. And so that might, set an expectation that's well beyond that client's means, and then they have to go back and revisit the brief and what do they want to compromise there. So another thing we'll do is next step is once we've got that design development resolved, that's when a builder has enough information from a CAD model to be able to create a detailed estimate. And that's just getting a lot closer to the finer amount. So it just eliminates blowouts and eliminates that shock. And for clients to invest all the money in pre-construction, it's just the best way to get a successful outcome in my mind.
And have you been able to integrate PHPB modelling into that process relatively easily? Do you have to charge extra up front to allow for modelling or extra time going through that process?
Yeah. Look, we're definitely charging for that point where, don't get me wrong, there's been a few projects where we've just backtracked and tried to learn about how we can best value add to a project and get our own heads around using Design PH in SketchUp. We find that's been an amazing learning curve for us and also to talk to our clients about why we've made some design changes and so forth and what we're starting.
So you're using SketchUp at concept stage before you're going into CAD?
No, I still think, look, at the end of the day, I still start with a pencil and a bit of paper.
Nice.
Well, actually, I use the iPad a lot. I think that's quite an efficient way to cut through more about the zoning and flow and how a space is going to connect and take a client on that sort of journey early on. But I think there's definitely, when it comes to the modeling, I still really like to jump into ArchiCAD and get the built form in the right kind of direction, and then we're still nutting out our best way to model this in Design PH, but what we seem to be doing is exporting it as a model and then tracing those our elements, I guess, that we've got set up in Design PH. And
it's interesting. It still doesn't. It's still that vision of a fully integrated process is on the horizon somewhere. You end up having to retrace over drawings. Because each software's got a slightly different purpose.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that integration, how that's going to work in the future with ArchiCAD. But look, I'm even keen to have a look at Eco Designer that's built into ArchiCAD just to see how can we help these models perform better, buildings perform better. So, look, it's all a learning curve. But look, we've got a great network now since doing Passive House, we've got a great network of builders that we've been in touch with that are Passive House certified. And it's interesting, just the conversation I've had with builders that I work with. They've gone and done the course because they're like, this is amazing. We didn't even know this. And they've just learned so much. And, they're already experimenting on their own projects at their own cost, and starting to up spec their wraps and things like that. So it's interesting. Like, I think, there are people out there that want to build better houses, and I think that's the importance of it. I think that's the journey.
Well, I think a lot of builders do. You mentioned about builders who are proud of what they do, and that's something that I've seen a few times of builders quite experienced builders who were maybe getting a little bit disenfranchised or a little bit tired, and then they get the opportunity to work on a passive house, and suddenly you can see the enthusiasm's back and the reason why they went into building in the first place, and it's about pride. Suddenly they get to do this project where they're actually proud of what they've done, and that must be such a great feeling, particularly on some of these projects which are 12, even 24 months long, and handing over those keys, knowing that the people who live there are just going to be so comfortable and healthy in there. Must be a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've helped you create, and the builders help you create. Like, we all want a sense of pride out of that as well. So I think that's critical.
Do you remember the very first time you came across Passive House and what your initial reaction was to it?
Yeah, I probably freaked out, to be honest, looking at all the numbers and what's this giant spreadsheet? And yeah, to be honest, there was a bit of fear when I went into the course, like going into this unknown, because I'd looked at a lot of the construction detailing and I was just, I get a bit excited about the detail and how we're going to execute it and how we're going to build it. And, we need to, I'm always thinking that we need to be able to make things as buildable as possible. And so these compositions, these wall build-ups and so forth, that detail point of it, I was pretty excited about. But the calculation side of things, I was packing myself. So, and, there's a network of architects and designers out there that will talk to each other and help each other. Yep. And as I said, the builders are happy to help other builders that are doing this. It's not competitive in that sort of sense. And then, there's Passive House certifiers that will get involved in the project as well, that help us get there and take us on the journey and, get that outcome. So once I realized that, I was a lot more comfortable that I'm not like just, plowing ahead and going into uncharted territory here. So, I was really...
So no reservations around the principles of air tightness and having to include mechanical ventilation?
Nah, it's critical. It's great. Like we've got a client who we were in the process of preparing our documentation for tendering, and then I taught them about a few things, talked to them about a few things that I'd learned at Passive House. And one of those clients is from Germany originally, and he knew all about Passive House and obviously their higher building standards over there. And so we've implemented the mechanical ventilation and we've just up-spec'd that project a lot. It's not going to be a passive house, but the difference between that set of documentation that was going to go out, that went out, was quite different. It's actually quite interesting. The most interest we have in Passive House and high performance from people that have originated from Europe.
Yep.
Because they know. You don't know what you don't know. In Australia, we just put up with it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but they'll migrate here and everyone will be saying, you don't need this, you don't need that. And they will say, that winter was the coldest winter I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
Because of
and they've grown up somewhere way colder.
Yeah. And it's just because of the condition that we tolerate, I guess, in our indoor environments. And that was...
No, you're absolutely right. I often comment that the best houses in New Zealand and Australia as well, I think, are built or owned by people with accents.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. But I think when you just going back to the Passive House course and that light bulb moment there, to me was health. Comfort was obvious to me, that we tolerate poor comfort, but to me that we spend 90% of our time indoors and we live in these with this air quality. To me that was just mind blowing. And then since then I've got like a carbon meter, a couple of carbon meters from Cameron Munro, and I've just found that fascinating. We're going in, when we're doing renovations in houses, we'll go and put these carbon meters in there for a couple of weeks, one in the bedroom, one in the living room, and measure particle matter as well. And I find that data fascinating.
So you're measuring carbon dioxide?
Yep. Yeah, CO2 meter. Right. Yeah, so it's measuring temperature as well. So that fluctuation in temperature and what temperature is it getting down to overnight. We're measuring carbon dioxide. What levels is the carbon dioxide getting up to in a night or in an evening when everybody's in the living room.
You've seen some scary figures.
It's alarming, yeah. In my own bedroom as well. I'm like, we're sleeping with the door open from now on. And that is a part of that education process for our clients right at the start to really look at, looking at the numbers and this is what an acceptable level of carbon dioxide should be in a room.
Yeah,
and this is what's
happening. So you're doing a bit of renovation work as well as new builds?
Yeah, look, it's mainly renovations. We're in the inner west in Melbourne, so there's a lot of old building stock that, leaves less to be desired. So that's
it does, but it also leaves, you leave stuff that can be desired, and you've got some outstanding projects in that regard that have been featured. And you got some favourites of those?
Yeah, look,
is that like asking your favourite child?
Yeah, look, there's the favourites in the sense that I'm just proud of what they turned out like. I think right now what resonates with me the most is the clients that are reaching out to us now that have been in lockdown over the last few months, and just how lucky they feel they are to have got into that place prior to that. So there's a few projects where it's just, it's changed people's lives and
literally,
and I'm just grateful to be able to help them get there. But I couldn't be more thankful for the client on that particular journey. They really raised the bar, and so I was able to try and help create that. So I didn't have to do any of the selling; they were doing the selling to me. So they were on board from the start, and we really had to work that site hard.
It's like a study of Australian architecture, all wrapped up in one little box. You've got the curved corrugated veranda out the front, and like you say, the workers' cottage.
Yeah,
but out the back, it's a completely different building.
Yeah, it is. And from early concepts, we were thinking, what are we going to do? Are we going to knock down this place? Are we going to do a 2-story extension? What can we fit here? That was really tricky. But at the end of the day, they took a lot of those compromises to keep it on a single level. Yeah, it's just a 2-bedroom house, but it was well executed, and we just maximized what we could from that site. And
I've sort of been a bit anti indoor-outdoor flow, but I think we're figuring out how to do it properly, so that you have these spaces where they're very open to the outdoors, but obviously you're using pretty high quality joinery there, so that you also have the ability to close it properly when you want it to be closed, but you still have really good connection to the outside. So you've got this sort of outdoor living space, but it has a decent door on it.
Yeah, that's right. It's that. It's the permanent connection with outside, regardless of whether the door's open or not. We've got to realise that we do have a lot of insects, and it's not always perfect outside. And some people will. I think we always want to bring outside in, and so understanding the best aspects of any particular site,
and they're limiting the amount of loss through your windows. How do you reconcile those two desires?
Yeah, look, I think there's definitely something that our greater population needs to understand, is that we have this massive desire for glass and a hell of a lot of it. But we don't need all of that to be connected with outside. We just need to design it to be in the right places. And I guess with windows, and another thing that you learn on Passive House is the weak spots, and obviously the glazing elements are, but the window frames themselves, and it's I guess if you add more openings into those frames, that's more frame, but we don't need as many openings. It's back just getting the balance right, but really truly looking at what are the best aspects of that site. And optimizing that. We're challenged here as well. We're on the south coast, so when we're doing coastal houses, we're going to have these south or southeasterly kind of views, which aren't optimal for having massive amounts of glass. So it's not going to be easy, but it's about getting those trade-offs right, and getting the balance right for sure.
Well, hopefully, James, I've dropped enough hints there for people to be keen to go and have a look. And I think it bodes well for the future of design in Australia and also New Zealand as well, and in the Southern Hemisphere in general, just kind of finding our own way and figuring out how to do this stuff in a high performance, but also a beautiful way that creates its own connection with the outdoors, like you said. So where's the best place for people to find you and your work?
Yeah, I guess altereco.net.au will draw you to our website and anywhere from there. But you'll find myself, James Goodlet, on LinkedIn. But yeah, and also Instagram. We're putting a bit of content up at the moment, Altereco Design. And that, yeah, again, like we were saying before, Matthew, it's that bringing people along for that journey and really raising the bar and educating people on these challenges that I guess we've got.
And that was James Goodlet from Altereco. He's based in Melbourne, Victoria. What do you think, Zach?
Well, it was a great conversation, super interesting. I was really impressed by his sort of intentionality around sustainability, and that whole thing of taking a step back after years of work and really examining the goals of his personal goals, I think, and also the goals that the kind of shared goals that the folks in the firm had, and then the ultimate brief was kind of incredible. I mean, it was 80 different, I think
82 questions.
82 questions and the 7 Ps, and it just makes so much sense. And was really, I think, clearly very clarifying for his practice. So it was inspiring.
I'm interested to find out from other architects as well if that's a luxury to be able to choose clients, or if it's just something that you have to set out as an intention when you establish yourself and say, as they did, they realized they were just working for everyone and anyone. And at one point they said, no, we're not aligned here. And like you said, they actually sat down as a team and wrote out what are our goals. And if you look on their front page of their website, it says right at the front there, we're on a mission. It's more than architecture. It's more than drawing lines and creating plans. They're actually on a mission, and that obviously comes through. And I think he quite enjoys now doing what he does.
Yeah, that's great. I think I've heard that phrase. We need to choose our, we need to interview and kind of choose our clients just as they do us, and it seems like that's not always easy to execute. It does seem like you get to a certain point. I've done some. When I was working at NK Architects, we had the luxury of doing that sort of mission forward communication, and it's exhilarating. It's not without risk, but
you're putting yourself right out there.
Yeah. But it's you only live once. It's good to try to make your mark.
I'd love to get other feedback on that. We got a email address for our podcast.
Oh, no, we don't. We should have one. We should. Yes, we do.
Let's make one up.
Yeah. Let's call it podcast@passivehouseaccelerator.com. How about that?
Bang, there you go. So if you've got any comments, thoughts, questions, then we'd love to hear from you. Just send us an email, podcast@passivehouseaccelerator.com, because the Passive House podcast is a project of the Passive House Accelerator. What have we got coming up at the Accelerator?
Well, there's a bunch of stuff happening in the Passive House world in the next little while. A couple of announcements I want to make. So the first are sort of U.S. centric, although these are events that are accessible internationally because of this virtual existence we're all going through. So the first one is a new lunchtime special by Ken Levinson, who is now executive director with the North American Passive House Network. And every Thursday, that's Pacific and Eastern time in the US. Every Thursday, he'll be doing this introduction to Passive House. It's eligible for AIA continuing education credits, and it'll be alternating between 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and noon Pacific Standard Time. So It's just happening today when we're recording this. So when the podcast is published on Monday, the next Thursdays will be at noon at Pacific Standard Time, and we'll include this in show notes. Do we have show notes?
We'll have show notes, definitely. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what time that'll be. That'll be 7:00 in the morning for me down in New Zealand, noon Pacific time. But hey, there'll be some people that are keen for that.
Yeah, so I think, and for longtime Passive House people, it's also, this is a chance to tell your friends about a great intro to Passive House if you got friends who are looking for that kind of primer or who would be primed for it. All right, so then the next one is that I want to announce is that PHIUS, Passive House Institute US, is doing its certified Passive House builder training starting on August 31st. And that runs a couple weeks, and it culminates with an examination process. But a great way to get trained up on how to build passive houses. On the international scene, the Passive House Institute is having its 24th International Passive House Conference virtually, and that starts September 20th and goes through October 8th. And it'll be a few hours on different days of the week. So it's not like chock full every single week, but lots of great content and a great opportunity also to get continuing education credits for your CPHC or CPHD. And finally, Architecture 2030 has its Carbon Positive Reset event, which is called the 1.5 degrees Celsius Global Teach-In. And it will have 3 of these for different continents around the world. So on September 8th, it will hold the Reset event for North and South America. On September 17th, it will hold one for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And on September 22nd, it will hold one for Asia and Asia Pacific. So this is a chance to learn all about zero carbon building, which we all know Passive House is a really great way to dramatically reduce operational carbon or bring operational carbon down to zero. So you combine that with embodied carbon down to zero and renewable energy, and you've got a real solution to the climate crisis in the building sector. So cool. Lots going on. That's just a sampling. If you're interested in learning more, we've got an event calendar at passivehouseaccelerator.com.
Check out all those dates there. There are also tickets now available for the Passive House South Pacific Passive House Virtual Conference, which will be 12th to 16th of October. But tickets are available now. But we'll talk more about that conference later on. Well, thank you very much, Zach. Been great. And I'd also like to do a shout out to Sydney Fishman, who's our intern, who helps put all this together. So I don't think we could do this without her. Much appreciated. And there are some other people we need to thank just before we close off.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Passive House podcast is a production of Passive House Accelerator, and the Accelerator is made possible by some generous support from sponsors. So our founding sponsors are Baxt Ingwe Architects, Mitsubishi Electric, RDH Building Science, StoCorp, and Zola Windows. And we also get support from our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, or the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. So thank you to all of those sponsors for their support.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for tuning in, and we'll speak to you again next week.